Willy Wonka is loved around the world as an eccentric chocolate-making genius, but is that all there really is to him? Are there mysterious or even dark motives hiding behind this innocent face? Well, my answer to that question is yes. Let me explain why. A few days ago, I woke up and I thought I should binge read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl and also watch the accompanying 2005 smash hit film directed by Tim Burton all in one day so that I could make a video about Willy Wonka. So I did. And for 12 hours, this man was pretty much the only thing that I was thinking about, and I discovered that this unassuming children's book character is practically riddled with hidden meanings and symbolic truths. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. In the book, there isn't much in the way of a backstory for Willy Wonka, but in the film, there is. So I'm going to be meshing the two stories together in order to create a more complete picture of this character. In addition, a lot of what I say shouldn't be considered to be canon. Consider it more as a very convincing theory that borderlines on truth. So everything begins with Willy Wonka's father, Wilbur Wonka, who was the city's most famous dentist. Throughout Willy Wonka's childhood, his father forbids him to ever eat chocolate or candy, and at Halloween he even throws all the sweets and chocolates in the fire in front of his eyes. What a jerk. Talk about child torture. As if it couldn't get any worse, he has to wear this, whatever the heck this is, to straighten out his teeth, which probably makes him the object of all the bullying in his entire school. But one day, Willy finds an unburned chocolate in the fireplace. He takes his opportunity and eats it, and as you can expect from a child that has been deprived of chocolate for his whole life, he falls in love, and he buys as much candy and chocolate as he can and starts making notes about the flavors and how he might improve them. Inevitably though, his father finds out, and once again he forbids Willy from following his dreams. So Willy decides to run away to all the candy capitals of the world, to which his father says, "Go ahead, but I won't be here when you come back." But of course, he's just a little boy, and he doesn't get any further than the Flags of the World section in the museum. But when he does come back to his father, he is indeed gone, because he's a jerk. But despite being all on his own, he manages to build the largest chocolate factory in the world, 50 times larger than any other factory in fact. He now has thousands of employees. But of course all the other chocolate companies are jealous of Willy Wonka's success, so they send spies into the factory to try to steal the secret recipes. And they are in fact successful. Fickle Grouper's factory, Mr. Prodnose's factory, and Mr. Slugworth's factory all begin making amazing things like ice cream that could never melt, or chewing gum that never lost its flavour, or bubble gum that you could blow up to huge sizes. So Willy Wonka was forced to close his entire factory, leaving thousands of people homeless. But luckily he discovered Oompa Loompa Land, and he hired the Oompa Loompas, promising them an endless supply of the cocoa beans that they craved. So that's roughly Willy Wonka's backstory, and as you know, he invites 5 lucky golden ticket winners to join him on a tour of the factory. Now all of this is pretty much canon because it happens in either the film or in the book. But this is where things start to get mysterious and interesting, and we start to question everything. So it all starts with this question. Why did Tim Burton decide to create this character of Wilbur Wonka, Willy Wonka's father? Because he isn't in the book, and there must have been a reason, and I don't think he made him purely to show how Willy Wonka started the factory. I think there's a much more significant reason, namely to express the effects of bad parenting. This is a theme that occurs throughout the book, and we can see it most acutely in Veruca Salt's father, who gives her absolutely anything she wants, resulting in a child who is never satisfied and who screams and shouts when she doesn't get what she wants. In fact, it is so extreme that the book says she would lie for hours on the floor, kicking and yelling in the most disturbing way. "Where's my golden ticket? I want my golden ticket!" And of course, her father once again fulfilled her wishes. And now this all ties into a theory that has been bubbling around the internet recently. A theory that Willy Wonka rigged the golden tickets so that these exact 5 children would find them, and that he has been spying on them for some time before he even announced anything about the golden tickets. And all along, right from the beginning, he already intended for Charlie to win the factory. Now, if we think about this, it makes sense, because Willy Wonka is someone who, like Charlie, has been deprived of chocolate throughout his childhood, and who probably is also jealous of all the other children who were allowed to eat as much chocolate as they wanted. In addition, he deeply disliked his father, and so he also had a grudge against bad parenting. So, would it be such an outrageous claim to say Willy Wonka intentionally chose children who were spoilt, selfish, and rich? Qualities which seem to stem from their equally bad parents. In the case of Augustus Gloop, his parents practically let him eat as much as he wants. They even seem to encourage it. And Violet Beauregard's parents are also just as vain and self-centered as Violet herself. Veruca Salt's parents give her absolutely everything she wants, and I think the most interesting of all is Mike TV, whose father is a picture of disappointment whenever he looks at his son, a trait which is eerily similar to Willy Wonka's own father, the picture of a disappointed parent. So as a result, Willy Wonka wants to expose the greed of the children and the parents who spoilt them by leading them through a series of rooms, each time tempting them with something that they just can't resist. Chocolate for Augustus, gum for Violet, a squirrel for Veruca, and TV for Mike. Everything just seems too perfect. But of course, you're probably still skeptical. You're probably thinking, of course there's going to be a room for every kid, because it makes for a good children's book. But believe me when I say that when it comes to the evidence for this theory, we have barely begun. We've only just established Willy Wonka's motivation. He wants to shame the 4 children. He wants to teach their parents a lesson he was never able to teach his own father, and he wants to give the factory to Charlie, the only good child. But scattered throughout the book and the film is tons of evidence that also supports this theory. Now, YouTube channels like The Film Theorists and The Theorizer have already covered a lot of this evidence from the film, so I'll cover some of the evidence in the film, but something that these 2 channels mainly ignore is the evidence from the book. You see, my dear friends, this is the original story, unedited, unfiltered, unchanged. If this theory really is true, then surely this is where we'll find the answers. And after reading all 30,000 words of it in one day, I can say that it is. So, the first question you might have is, how did Willy Wonka manage to give Charlie Bucket the golden ticket without raising suspicion? With the other 4 children, it was probably easy because they had plenty of money to buy the chocolate. It would have been a simple matter of hiring somebody to place the chocolate bar in their vicinity, somewhere where they are likely to buy it. In Veruca Salt's case, he would simply have to put the golden ticket somewhere among the millions of golden ticket bars that her father bought for her. But in Charlie's case, he is already very poor, and he only gets 1 bar a year on his birthday. Well, let's have a look at the book. You see, before he finds the golden ticket, he first finds a 50p piece, half buried in the snow, which he used to buy the chocolate bar. Now, after Charlie sees the coin, it says, and I now quote directly from the book, "Quickly he looked around him. Had someone dropped it? No, that was impossible because of the way it was buried." Now, one of the oldest rules of writing is, in a good story, every sentence, every word, should have a very distinct and obvious purpose, such as describing an important detail about the characters, the surroundings, or even the plot twists. So that begs the question, what is the purpose of this detail? Had someone just dropped it? No, that was impossible because of the way that it was half buried. If we think about it logically, there are only 2 ways that a coin can land on the ground. A, if someone drops it, and B, if someone places it. Now, Roald Dahl has already ruled out the first one, leaving only the second option. And could it be a coincidence that the nearest chocolate shop was only 10 paces away? Then, as any boy ravaged by hunger would, he goes into the shop and buys that chocolate bar. Now, if Willy Wonka did conduct this scenario, then how did he know which chocolate bar Charlie would choose in the shop? Well, he didn't, but he didn't have to, because it is the shopkeeper who hands Charlie the bar of chocolate, the exact bar containing the golden ticket. Could it be, then, that this shopkeeper had really been working for Willy Wonka all along, that he placed the coin in the snow, 10 paces from his shop, just as Charlie was approaching, and that he chose that exact bar of chocolate which he knew would contain the golden ticket? And is it a coincidence that Charlie finds the chocolate bar just one day before the factory tour, while the other 4 children found it weeks in advance? Apparently, everything had fallen into place just in the nick of time. Or was it all planned? Now, you may still be very skeptical about this, and I wouldn't blame you, but believe me when I say that we have barely begun. The next pieces of evidence are so strong that it is hard not to believe this theory, in the same way that it was hard for Augustus Gloop not to find the golden ticket.
He eats so many candy bars a day that it was not possible for him not to find one.
In the letter printed on the golden ticket given to each of the 5 children, there are written these exact words, and I quote from the book: "I am preparing other surprises that are even more marvelous and more fantastic for you and for all my beloved golden ticket holders. In your wildest dreams you could not imagine that such things could happen to you. Just wait and see." Now, when you read that, you may already know what I'm going to say. It says that such things could happen to you. Now, in a factory tour, you probably wouldn't expect things to happen to you exactly. You would expect to see things happen, but you would hope that these things, whatever they are, would not happen to you. Getting sucked up into a big glass pipe, for instance, or turning into a huge blueberry. You get the picture. So could it be that even now, Willy Wonka knew exactly what would happen to all of the children? And that's not even the best piece of evidence. Because before they are all about to enter the factory, Willy Wonka says, "Our tour is about to begin. Please do keep together. Please don't wander off by yourselves. I shouldn't like to lose any of you at this stage of the proceedings." So far, everything has the eerie feel of being rehearsed and planned. And this idea of everything being rehearsed is not seen any more clearly than with the Oompa Loompas songs. Because after every child's inevitable demise, the Oompa Loompas seem to immediately burst into song. And these aren't just any songs, they are long songs that perfectly describe the current predicament of all the children, using perfect rhyme and meter and expressing their sinister motives. Just listen to these few lines of Augustus Gloop's song. "He'll be quite changed from what he's been when he goes through the fudge machine. Slowly the wheels go round and round, the cogs begin to grind and pound, 100 knives go slice, slice, slice. We add some sugar, cream and spice. We boil him for a minute more until we're absolutely sure that all the greed and all the gall is boiled away for once and all." Now I can see why this part of the song was not included in the family film. And you know something else that was not included in the family film? Augustus's final fate. You see, for some reason in the film, he turns out fine. In fact, nothing is really different about him. But in the book, he is described as thin as a straw. It seems like Willy Wonka did, in fact, boil away all his greed after all. Is this what he knew would happen all along? There are other songs that also express similar messages which fit well with the other children. But the interesting point to make is that these songs are long. In fact, the 4 songs together make up over 5% of the total word count for the entire book. My point is that it would be impossible to improvise these songs on the spot. They must have been rehearsed. And if you don't believe me, just listen to the words of Veruca Salt's father and Mike TV.
I do say that all seemed rather rehearsed. Like they knew it was gonna happen.
To which Willy Wonka replies,
Oh, poppycock.
in a way that suggests it is anything but poppycock. This is a point that was highlighted in a video by The Theorizer, which you should definitely check out because he has even more evidence for this theory. The rabbit hole goes deeper than you think with this one. For example, don't you think it's weird how before they're all about to get on the pink boat, the Oompa Loompas suddenly burst out laughing for no apparent reason? It even says in the book, then suddenly, for some reason best known to themselves, they all burst into shrieks of laughter. But could it be that this mysterious reason is because they are all in on it? Because they knew what was going to happen to Augustus Gloop? Because they know what is about to happen to the other 3 children? So inevitably Willy Wonka leads them through the inventing room and to the bubblegum machine. And as you know, Violet takes the bubblegum, chews it, and turns into a giant blueberry. But just listen to this next line. It always happens like that, sighed Mr. Wonka. I've tried it 20 times in the testing room on 20 Oompa Loompas, and every one of them finished up as a blueberry. Every one of them turned into a blueberry. The word always is even written in italics. In other words, Willy Wonka knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Violet Beauregarde would turn into a blueberry if she chewed the gum. So don't you think, if Willy Wonka knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Violet would turn into a blueberry, he would have tried a little harder to stop her chewing the gum, unless of course he wanted it to happen. Willy Wonka even says that's what comes of chewing disgusting gum all day long, which begs the question, why would he even make gum if he doesn't like it? Which is exactly the question which Mike TV asks him. If you think gum is so disgusting, then why do you make it in your factory? To which Willy Wonka replies, I do wish you wouldn't mumble. Curious. It's almost as if Willy Wonka specifically created the machine for one purpose, and for one purpose only, to turn Violet Beauregarde into a giant blueberry. But I've saved one of the best pieces of evidence for last. And once again, it is a direct quote from the book. When Charlie is the only one left, Willy Wonka tells him that the factory is his. Grandpa Joe asks, But why should you want to give your factory to little Charlie? To which Willy Wonka replies, but I don't want that sort of person. I don't want a grown-up person at all. A grown-up won't listen to me, he won't learn. He will try to do things his own way and not mine. So I had to have a child. I want a good, sensible, loving child, one to whom I can tell my most precious, sweet-making secrets. He finally admits that all along he wanted specifically a child to inherit his factory. Not an adult, but a child. Almost as if he knew that all 5 tickets would go to children all along, and that just one of them could be described as a good, sensible, loving child. Charlie. Someone who appreciates chocolate, because like him, he has spent his whole childhood being deprived of it. Now, thus concludes all the evidence that I have gathered for this theory. But whether this is true or not, it expresses many interesting things about Willy Wonka, specifically the difference between Willy Wonka in the movie and the book. You see, in the book, Willy Wonka allows Charlie to bring his family to come and live with him in the factory. But in the film, he says that if he wants to own the factory, Charlie will have to leave his family behind. He says, you can't run a chocolate factory with a family hanging over you like an old dead goose. A chocolatier has to run free and solo, he has to follow his dreams, gosh darn the consequences. But Charlie, being different from Willy Wonka in the fact that he loves his family, refuses. This is a very significant moment because it makes Willy Wonka rethink his entire concept of family, that it doesn't have to be something that can hang over you like a dead goose, but that it can be something beautiful and precious. So Charlie persuades him to visit the father he left when he was still a child, and save their lost relationship. And in one swoop, Willy Wonka and his father are both redeemed for their past mistakes. And Willy Wonka finally realizes why Charlie loved his family, that despite the fact that they were constantly hungry, they still had each other. But Willy Wonka, alone in his huge factory, had a different kind of hunger. A hunger that couldn't be filled with chocolate or inventions, or even playing tricks with spoiled children, because in the factory, Willy Wonka was alone for 3 years. In Genesis 2 verse 18 in the Bible, it says, "The Lord God says, it is not good for the man to be alone." We are not made to be alone, because when we're alone, something happens to us, a slow, subtle deterioration in your mind. Before you realize it, you can become as calloused and isolated as Willy Wonka himself, with the only small joy in your life coming from the things that you create or the work that you do instead of what really matters. And it is this reality that should bind us together despite our flaws and despite our differences. And because it is possible to look past all the flaws and differences and look at the person instead of what you dislike about them. And in the movie, Willy Wonka found this out. His father was definitely not perfect, but he still went back to him. So thank you so much for watching my breakdown of Willy Wonka. I hope you enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing and hitting the bell to get notifications from this channel, and comment a character that you want me to look at next. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.
Wasn't that just magnificent? I was worried it was getting a little dodgy in the middle part, but then that finale, wow!